أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. صلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله، صلى الله عليك وعلى جدك وأبيك، صلى الله عليك وعلى أمك وأخيك، صلى الله عليك وعلى التسعة المعصومين من بنيك، صلى الله عليك وعلى المستشهدين بين يديك. يا ليتنا كنا معكم سيدي فنفوز فوزا عظيما. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وكونوا مع الصادقين. بتعجيل فرج مولانا صاحب الزمان رحمه الله من صلى على محمد وآل محمد. For the silence in the ladies section, allow salawat again. Today's lecture, inshallah, we're going to talk about living under or in the time of the absence of our Imam and preparing ourselves to his return. As we mentioned in the last few nights, where we started with parenting and the prerequisites for parenting, and then we talked about youth in Islam and self-development and all of these things. Today we want to see what are the requirements for us living in the time of the absence of the Imam Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. The ayah I just read gives us the formula in a brief. And then we will explore further within that formula. It says, Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu. And again, very interestingly, it actually talks to the mu'mins. And we said, whenever it's Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu, it's male and female, equally. Ittaqullah. The first of the equation is taqwa of Allah. And I'm going to explain it to us. وَكُونُوا مَعَ الصَّادِقِينَ. So the translation of the actual verse in the Quran, all believers, be mindful of Allah and be with the truthful. Now, be mindful of Allah. Taqwa, a lot of people translate it differently. And that's why the translation of Quran, I always emphasize this point. When you look at the translations of Quran, you always see a lot of different versions. Don't look at one translation of Quran and assume now I know it all. Because the translation is limited by the knowledge and understanding of the translator. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knowledge and understanding is beyond any humans. So anyone translating the text of Allah, even if that person was the best of their creed and their trade and their community, doesn't mean that that person has got the full meaning. Why? Two reasons. First of all, the ayat of the Quran, and we have been mentioning this for a few nights now, there's muhkam, so there's solid ayats where its actual meaning is obvious, and the meaning that's obvious is the actual meaning of the ayat, and there's mutashabah. Mutashabah means one verse can have multiple meanings. And therefore, we say Quran is always alive. And it's always relevant to every generation. They can reread the Quran in their own way. And that's why the bab of ijtihad or juristic reasoning is open for Muslims. Because we say a jurist might understand the text of the Quran differently to another jurist. And therefore you see that some jurists are different in their interpretation of the Quran. And by the way, these differences between jurists, between scholars, between Muslims, it's alright, it's acceptable. If we say that the Quran has different interpretations, then we say that those that follow Quran can have different understanding of the same text. And that's why we follow Ahlul Bayt. Because of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and this is the, mashallah, the narration is written, and yesterday I emphasized the environment should be teaching our youth about their principles. قال Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, a hadith that's authenticated by all Muslims, إني تارك فيكم الثقلين كتاب الله وعترة أهل بيتي. I truly leave amongst you two heavy things. One is the book of Allah, Quran. Second is عترتي أهل بيتي, my descendants, my family, which is Ahlul Bayt sallallahu alayhi. So it's very important for us to refer to our Imams for further interpretation of the Quran. Because that's what the Prophet ﷺ ordered us and commanded us to do. Not because what he suggested, it's not a suggestion. See, إِنِّي تَارِكٌ فِيكُمْ, it's not a suggestion. It's an actual order, it's a command. And we know in the Quran Allah says, مَا آتَاكُمُ الرَّسُولُ فَخُذُوهُ وَمَا نَهَاكُمْ عَنْهُ فَانْتَهُوا. Whatever the Prophet gives you, then take on, and whatever he keeps you away from, leave. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the Prophet ordered us to follow Ahlul Bayt for the interpretation of the Quran, and therefore we do so. This basic understanding is the start of our preparation as a self-preparation for understanding Imam Mahdi alayhi salam and understanding the need for Imam Mahdi alayhi salam. Because Quran and Itra are always together. Quran and Ahlul Bayt are always together. That's why we have this narration, Aliyyun ma'al haqq wal haqqu ma'a Ali. Ali is with rightness and rightness is with Ali. Why? Because Ali alayhi salam, as the first of Ahlul Bayt, as the first Imam of Ahlul Bayt sallallahu alayhim, represented that interpretation of the Quran in literal sense. So we come to Ittaqullah. Taqwa, one companion of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam asked him, what is taqwa? Imam simply gave him a formula. And this is, again, we have a lot of narrations about taqwa, but this one I like it because for the youth, it's very basic formula. And you can actually use it as a simple method to build that taqwa. Because أَنْ يَجِدَكَ اللَّهُ حَيْثُ أَمَرَكَ, that means that Allah finds you where He orders you to be, and to not find you where He did not order you to be. Or doesn't find you in the places that He ordered you to not be. For example, it becomes a very simple mechanism of choice. Be in the Majlis of Imam Hussein. My dad tells me, I'm going to the Markaz tonight. Would you like to come? Wait, Dad, is that something that Allah wants me to be there? Yes, I'm coming. A friend of mine tells me, let's go out tonight. Where are we going out to? To the nightclub. Wait, is that somewhere Allah wants me to be there? No, I'm not interested. So what happens is that this equation, if we use it in our daily life, that's the basic formula to gain taqwa. That Allah finds you where He likes you to be, and doesn't find you where He doesn't like you to be. And by the way, not just the physical place we're talking about, even the action. For example, does Allah, you think, like you when He sees you fighting with your neighbor? Of course not. Does Allah would like you when He sees you taking care of your neighbor? Yes. You see how it's a very good tool to use? Because by the way, I strongly believe, and possibly in the last few nights you have seen this, I strongly believe in the practical tools. Because concepts, it's very simple. You can read a lot of books about concepts. The most important thing is how can I apply these concepts in my daily life? Because if I read it and I go, wow, such a beautiful explanation of what taqwa is, but I don't know how to apply it in my life, does it become practical really, or becomes a very beautiful book to read? It's very important. Yes, go read books, understand concepts, but also look for tools. What tool will get me there? Once, I remember, there was a sheikh who used to come to one of the communities. And he started teaching the youth the 100 steps to reach Arfan. So he has divided the Arfan, or the steps to reach Arfan, into 100. And basically you do this dhikr, and you do that, and you pass this understanding, and you read this book, and you do this tasbih, and you do this salawat, and you fast for this long, and then you basically go from one level to level higher, 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 till you get to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in 100 stages. Yeah, we have some books to that effect. A lot of the youth were confused, to be honest. Some of them came to my father, and my father is one of the scholars in Australia. He's the main representative of Nigeria. They came to me and said, Sheikh, this is too complicated, the formula. Too complicated. Finally, some of them said we have reached level 99. Where's the thing? Go, no, how is it complicated? They started arguing amongst each other. One of them said, no, I've reached level 99 already. You know, what you talking about? Some of them go, no, if I want to apply this, I'm not going to even go to work, I'm not going to go to anywhere. I can't do anything anymore. Sheikh answered them very nicely. He said, you know the formula? It's one simple formula. Pray on time. Pray on time. You don't need all these 100 steps. Pray on time. That's it. That's the tool. Whenever it's prayer time, wherever you are, pray on time. That's your tool. You go, oh, what about these 100 steps? He looked at the person who was in level 99. He goes, do you pray on time? He goes, oh, no, Sheikh. He goes, don't worry about the whole 99 levels. You couldn't have reached level 99, you don't. Sometimes don't look for tools that are complicated. As soon as you see tools that are complicated, and 100 steps, and 10 steps, and 50 ways, and 600, these are books that just need to be printed so it becomes the bestseller. It's very interesting. Have you seen this? Every book you pick up in the library says bestseller of New York Times. I think every single book printed in the US is a bestseller of New York Times anyway. It's been the bestseller of New York Times. These are just for selling, honestly. I'm not criticizing the sheikh who taught them. I think he himself thought, oh, let me teach them a tool. When we talk about Islam, Islam simplifies things. It doesn't complicate life. How is it simplification if you go 100 steps or 100 stages, or do this 1,000 times and do that 10,000 times? Yes, there are recommended deeds if you had time. Imam Ali alayhi salam says it very beautifully. Because لِلنَّفْسِ إِقْبَالٌ وَإِدْبَارٌ. A human nafs, a human self, a human being sometimes is attracted and sometimes is falling back. لِلنَّفْسِ إِقْبَالٌ وَإِدْبَارٌ. فإن أقبلت فعليك بالنوافل وإن أدبرت فعليك بالفرائض. Your nafs, yourself, sometimes is encouraged and sometimes is discouraged. When it's encouraged to do more, do the nawafil after prayers. You know the nawafil? The mustahab, 4 rak'ah after dhuhr, after al-asr, and so on, and ghufayla after maghrib, and so on. You go do them. فَإِنْ أَدْبَرَتْ. If you don't see your nafs is encouraged, you feel a bit heavy today, just stick to the wajib. Just do the wajib. That's the formula that Al-Bayt give. So yes, if you saw yourself motivated, if you saw yourself encouraged, if you saw yourself really want to do more, by all means do more. But not to the extent that you start affecting your life, your loved ones, your duties, and saying, oh, I have to do all of these things and it's very difficult. You know, Sheikh was mentioning a couple of nights ago, Salat al-Layl is extremely encouraged for us. Do it while you're in bed. Do it while you're sitting down. Do it while you're watching TV. Islam simplifies things. Don't go, and this is why I'm emphasizing this, don't believe in people that give you all these formulas, because a lot of these formulas are not, I don't know where they come from. Be careful. Be very careful. Especially if the formula is getting you away from Allah and not towards Him. And I don't want to name names and I don't want to give examples. I just want you to have that filter. Does this formula that was given to me will get me into taqwa Allah, or I have no idea what effect it has on me? Because when we come to the preparation for Imam Mahdi, suddenly everyone becomes the expert of the matter. And everyone is trying to take you left and take you right. And that's how deviation happens. That's how cult mentality starts. You know, a lot of cults here today, I will give you the stories without mentioning the names, because I don't want to have bad-mouthed anyone. It started from someone claiming, I am getting closer to the Imam. Suddenly he has a following. He goes, all right, I have a following, people seem to like it. He goes, actually I'm meeting the Imam. Now his fellowship extended. Now he goes, no look, I'm the Imam too. And I'm sure all of you have heard of this guy in London who now claims he is the son of the Imam, or the son of the son of the Imam, or the son of the son of the Imam, whatever. We've lost count, mashallah, a lot of them. Speaks perfect English and has followers and all of these things. This guy was Shia. Don't think that this guy came out of nowhere. If this guy has followers, that means every single one of us is at risk. His followers didn't come from out of nowhere. They didn't come from, earth suddenly opened and they came out. I know some of the followers of the deviants. I'm not going to mention the name of, because I don't want to mention them, because I don't want people to start looking for their things. They were in Sydney, wallah, they used to pray with us, and some of them were our best friends. Now they believe a guy from nowhere is the Imam, or the son of the Imam. And they believe in him. So we have to be very careful, and I was mentioning in the youth session earlier, and I emphasize again, and again, and again, believe in the principles. Read about the principles of our faith and keep them as your filter. Because every day you're going to hear a new idea. Every day you're going to see something new. Every day someone else will come with new theories. If you don't have those filters embedded in your brain, what happens? You're exposed to risk. Risk mitigation is a rational strategy that we use as humans to prevent us from what? Bringing harm to ourselves. If we do that with our financial wealth, why shouldn't we be doing it with our religious beliefs as well? So please, taqwa Allah starts by having filters. By having filters. And those filters are the only ones that Allah in the Quran mentions or Ahlul Bayt and the Prophet mentioned. Only, strictly. Any other filter is human-made. And the problem with human-made, it can be right, it can be wrong. It can be relevant to one individual, but not relevant to the other. It can be relevant in one situation, but not relevant to the other. It's very important we create filters. Don't create them yourself. I mean, adapt filters and put them. For example, I'll give you a very good example. There is now a trend going, collective ijtihad. For anyone has heard that. Collective ijtihad, collective marja'iyya. Few individuals sit together and they decide the rulings for the Shia. Why do we need to follow one single marja'? What's this dictatorship? Why one marja' and Najaf decides? What about few educated people in different cities around the world collectively decide our rulings? Doesn't sound a rational argument, or does it? It sounds rational. It sounds very much relevant to our daily lives. What are the basis of that? What is the evidence for that? Every single narration of Ahlul Bayt Salamullah alayhi, every single narration of Ahlul Bayt talks about following a scholar. Taqleed is a principle that every single Muslim believes in. And are the followers of Ahlul Bayt even more? Ahlul Bayt established marja'iyya as one scholar reaching the ability to deduct truth. Where did you get your principles from? What's the evidence for you? Have filters. As soon as you hear it, your filters should be that sensitive that as soon as you hear the idea, go, wait a second, what are the basics of what you're saying? Every narration of the Imams talking about scholar and following the scholar. What are you talking about? When did we have this thing? Where is the narrations? Where is the evidence you have for that? We're talking about following Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's commands. Is it open to debate? Secondly, one of the principles of ijtihad, because they have reached ijtihad. Ijtihad means the ability to deduct religious rulings through reasoning based on kitab and sunnah, the Thaqalain we talked about, sunnah of the Prophet and the Imams. Based on this, the ability to deduct, okay? And they have to be the most knowledgeable in that. Now, if you accept to be in a collective, then sometimes this collective decides by majority. In Islam, in the principle of ijtihad, every single person that puts himself into the position of giving rulings has to not follow anyone else, has to follow his own deductions. Now, if the collective decided something that didn't agree with you, you've lost your ijtihad. That person can't be in that collective. And within one fatwa, all of them are not discredited. They're not to be followed anymore. If you follow them, it's haram. Everything you do, your prayer, your fasting, all unacceptable. It's haram. As soon as they issued their first fatwa, it became haram to follow them. See how filters help us to see this misguidance that comes every day? Third thing, Allah in the Quran says 1,000,000 times, the most of the people are tyrants, most of the people are misguided, most of the people are criminals, most of the people will guide you to the wrong path. وَكَمْ مِنْ فِئَةٍ صَغِيرَةٍ غَلَبَتْ فِئَةٍ. How many group of small followers won over a group of bigger followers because Allah willed it. Allah in the Quran screams, majority doesn't count. How can you create collective ijtihad based on majority? What Quran is against it. You see how filters work? I didn't say what scholars say yet. It's principles of our religion. Filters are important. So anyone then comes and puts that argument, one of two. Either he's ignorant and has no clue what he's saying, or he has other alternative plans. That's it. Door closed. I don't need to even argue with you. Having filtered, because the time of the absence of the Imam, we have narrations that's really scary. One of the narrations, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, "La tugharbu," that means you will be filtered. Like, have you seen this, what you call it? Yeah, you have the sit. You go and you're going to be cleared. So, for example, it's like a filter, and you're going to go through the filter. Then another filter, you guys are going to go through that filter. And every time it's going to get finer and finer and finer, to the extent that only a few of you will stay on the right path. Every time a filter will be added into time. Well, sometimes the filter is through wrong marja'iyah. Sometimes the filter is through wrong beliefs. Sometimes filter is through sectarian violence and sectarian stuff. Sometimes filter is becoming over, exaggerates the Ahlul Bayt. Sometimes filter undermine Ahlul Bayt. Sometimes those filters will be applied at the end of the time, to the extent, another narration says that the person holding to their religion is like someone who's holding to a fire, to a flamed charcoal. All these are happening in our time now. If we don't create awareness through actually teaching ourselves the principles, we will go astray without knowing. See, that's where the danger is. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, these people, the Shia, supposed called the scholars, who misguide people. Imam Sadiq says, أخطر على شيعتنا من جيش يزيد على جدي الحسين. They are more dangerous on our followers than the army of Yazid surrounding Imam Hussein. Who are they? Scholars who are dressed like scholars or sound like scholars. At the end of the time, some people will bring misguidance to the community that are more dangerous on the community than the army of Yazid surrounding Imam Hussein. We are in a time that we need to be aware. When it comes to English-speaking world, it becomes even worse. Because sometimes we let anyone go on the podium. And we think, wow, he makes sense. And he's absolutely not making any sense. It's not but by what the person says and how beautiful they say it. It's about filters. I can't emphasize that enough. That is taqwa. Taqwa is to know where Allah wants me to stand and where Allah doesn't want me to stand. A good example of that was Ali al-Akbar. Ali al-Akbar, in their path to Karbala, Imam Hussein alayhi salam wanted to try him, wanted to have a conversation with him. He says, my son Ali, what do you think of what's going to happen? Obviously they were going outnumbered. They're already going towards Shahada. Everyone knew that. It became very obvious, especially after Hur and his 1,000 knights arrived and surrounded them and started leading them until they got to Karbala. Imam is having a conversation with him. Because what do you think of what's going to happen to us? What's his answer to him? He goes, Father, alasna ala al-haqq? Aren't we on the right path? See how this filter of taqwa we talked about? The filter of taqwa. Alasna ala al-haqq? Aren't we on the right path? The Imam says, wallah. Because whatever happens, then let it happen. Who cares what happens? The most important filter he applied, are we on the right path or we're not? If we are, if I am, see the verse I started with? وَكُونُوا مَعَ الصَّادِقِينَ. I'm already with the Sadiq of my time, Imam Hussein alayhi salam. The taqwa taught him. See, Allah says, first of all, taqwa, then كُونُوا مَعَ الصَّادِقِينَ. By the way, all our tafasir say مَعَ الصَّادِقِينَ, meaning Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. Sallu ala Muhammad. This Ali Akbar alayhi salam, narrations are different. Some say he was 18, some say he was 28, some say he was 26. Let's explore Ali Akbar as a good guide for us, first of all, to understand him, and secondly, to connect to someone as a role model, to learn from him. And I encourage you to read about Ali Akbar's life, because it's a very beautiful life. Ali al-Akbar, three characteristics which are important for him, or three things I want to talk about. First of all, Ali al-Akbar before Ashura. He has, even in narrations we have, that he had his own setup, social setup. So he had his own, let's say, office-like place for him to welcome guests. And people of Medina used to go to him to ask their religious questions. So he was a scholar in his own right, and he used to represent Imam Hussein alayhi salam in disputes. He used to represent him in answering people's inquiries and answering people's questions. To be the representative of the Imam is a huge, huge honor. Not because he was the son of the Imam, because he had the qualities to do so. And we have narrations that he used to actually solve disputes. That means he was socially also aware and knew how to. By the way, a good mu'min, and again, we learn from Ali Akbar, a good mu'min, Imam Ali alayhi salam says, إِصْلَاحُ ذَاتِ الْبَيْنِ, to mend between two mu'mins, that they actually, their relationship has broken down, to mend that relationship is better than all fasting and all worship. Better than all worship is to mend between two mu'min brothers or sisters. Ali al-Akbar, one of his duties was that. When people fall apart, he actually fixes their relationship. So he was a socially participant person. He participated in society. He participated in his community. The second thing about Ali al-Akbar is in the Imam's description of him. And we have narrations from others that says the same about him. كان أشبه الناس. He was the most resemblant of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. خلقا means in looks, physically. وخلقا means in his mannerism, in his akhlaq, in his morality. ومنطقا. See, mantiqa, actually some scholars say this mantiqa bit is very strange. Because mantiqa means in rationality. We believe the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam as the best creation of Allah. Don't we? So the mind of the Prophet is not a normal mind. It's not an ordinary mind. Imam Hussein says, he looks like him, alright, looks like him, his grandfather. What a great honor in itself. His mannerism is like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Again, we say, of course, he was brought up in the household of the Imam. So obviously he would resemble the Prophet in his mannerism. Mantiqa means in his logical reasoning, what's going on here? To resemble the Prophet in his later, that shows Ali Akbar wasn't a normal, ordinary person that was just happened to be the son of the Imam. Thirdly, in Ashura, The sons of Imam Ali alayhi salam were martyred. Actually, in some narrations, up to 6 of the sons of Imam Ali were martyred, including Abbas and his 3 brothers, and 2 others from another wife of the Prophet of the Imam Ali alayhi salam. The sons of Imam Hassan alayhi salam, including Qasim. The other sons of Imam Hussein alayhi salam were martyred. True? Actually, we started the whole series of lectures this year with the narration of Imam Rida alayhi salam, where he says, Imam Hussein on the day of Ashura with 18 men of Bani Hashim was martyred, that on the entire surface of the planet there was no one better than them. Imam says, now we see every Imam when they go to the ziyarah of Ali, Imam Hussein, they have a specific ziyarah every single time for Ali al-Akbar. Have you seen it in the ziyarat? Open any ziyarah. Ziyarat al-Hussein, then go ziyarat Ali ibn Hussein, ziyarat al-Shuhada, everyone together. Ali al-Akbar told Imam Sadiq, Imam Baqir, Imam Rida, Imam Qasim, all the 10 Imams, the 9 Imams, including Imam Hussein, and I'll tell you Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Do ziyarah for Ali al-Akbar, separate from everybody. And immediately after Imam Hussein alayhi salam. It shows Ali al-Akbar wasn't just another son of the Imam. Now coming back to the point about Imam Hussein. When Ali al-Akbar went to battle, Imam Salamullahi alayhi recited a verse that actually, this verse talks about the Prophet's status. It starts from the Prophet, says Al Ibrahim, Al Nuh, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has exalted, and talks then about the Prophet and his family, that they were exalted because they're descendants of that line. The whole ayah. He recited that when Ali Akbar qualified. And then after reciting that, he looks at Umar ibn Sa'd and he says, Ya Umar ibn Sa'd, قطع الله رحمك كما قطعت رحمي. O Umar ibn Sa'd, may Allah end your descendants, your bloodline, exactly like how you ended my bloodline. So Imam alayhi salam saw Ali al-Akbar as his bloodline. Ali al-Akbar then faced the enemy with a great courage, and he was fighting very bravely. His mother Layla was in the tent. She says, I looked at the face of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. When I saw him happy, I knew Ali al-Akbar was doing fine. When I saw him worried, I knew that Ali al-Akbar was facing a challenge. Suddenly I see the face of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, gets very worried. I came to the Imam. I said, Oh Aba Abdullah, what's happening? He says, لَقَدْ بَرَزَ إِلَيْهِ مَنْ يُخَافْ مِنْهُ عَلَيْهِ. Someone came to fight him that would worry anyone looking at him, because one of the bravest men of the Arabs at that time. So then she goes, what can I do to my son? He said, you can go inside the tent and you can pray for him, because I've heard my beloved grandfather, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that said the dua of a mother for her son is accepted. So she goes in the khayma, she puts her hijab down, she looks at the sky and says, Ya Rad Yusuf ila Yaqub, or the one who returned back Yusuf to Yaqub, return my son Ali to me. I swear to you, Allah, because of the loneliness of Hussein, because of the loneliness of Hussein, because of the pain of Hussein, because of the martyrdom of Fatima al-Zahra, she starts mentioning and swearing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Suddenly Ali al-Akbar comes, extremely proud, carrying the head of his enemy to Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and says, Al-Basharatul Bashara ya Abata. He wants Imam Hussein to feel proud. He comes, oh my father, look what have I done. Imam says to him, go to the khayma, go to the tent, your mother is awaiting you. He comes into the tent, He hugs his mother. They fall to the ground crying. After a while, he goes, sorry mother, but I have to go to leave for my final destiny. She holds him down. Ali al-Akbar goes away from her. He goes to Imam Hussein alayhi salam, gives him a final farewell. They both cry together to the extent that he actually leaves. And then he goes into the battlefield. He starts fighting until he falls on his horse. When they strike his head and the blood from his forehead goes on covers the eyes of the horse. So the horse, instead of going back to the camp of Imam Hussein, goes to the camp of the enemy. So the enemy soldiers start using the opportunity. This person hits him with a sword. The other person pierces him. The other person hits him. When they so on until they cut him into pieces and falls to the ground. It says, Ya batahu ya Hussein. Ya batahu ya Hussein. Oh my father, Hussein, this is my grandfather, the Prophet. He's giving me water that I will not feel thirsty afterwards. And he says, come towards us quickly. I've preserved your water too. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always gives us the strength to be like Ali al-Akbar, and welcome Shaykh for the last salawat.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.